All right, we are back. It is Colts Corner with myself, Kevin Bowen, and Eddie Garrison, as the Colts are on their bye week. So we'll stick with this pod this week. Next week, we'll probably go with the Wednesday afternoon. That way, we'll at least get an injury report on Colts-Chiefs as one of the more anticipated games, certainly of the regular season, is here. Eddie Garrison, good morning to you.
Good morning. Congratulations. Welcome, Nellie Bowen, to the world.
Thank you.
Congratulations to you, and nice job by Maddie Bowen by powering through it all.
Boy, that is an understatement to say that. So, very thank you for that, Eddie. And all of our nurses, doctors, just rather wild, frankly, watching how seamless they can make it work, or look, I should say. And Maddie, an absolute rock star there. So, yes, little Nelly into the world on Friday. Appreciate everybody that's reached out with some nice messages. And I never thought I'd be watching morning international coffee football holding my daughter from the hospital, but nonetheless, that's where I was Sunday morning.
Nelly, a much better welcome to Notre Dame football than Max Bowen, right?
When Navy scored to tie the game at 7, I thought to myself, oh, shit, is this happening again? But then when Notre Dame rattled off whatever it was, 42 or something in a row after that, or 42-3 the rest of the way, I was very, very happy. I did the push-ups with her in the room, Eddie. Kind of held her up to the...
I saw the video from Maddie.
I was a little nervous if Maddie thought that would be a good thing or not, but she actually laughed at that. So I was very grateful for her support with the Irish. Yeah, I mean, you talk about wild football. I mean, literally in that hotel. But by the way, having a fall baby, very underrated. This is my first fall baby. I was reminded, well, at some point you're going to have birthday parties or around that, so it might not be great. But from waking up at the start of the final Indiana drive, literally woke up at the start of that drive, from a little nap, and then to watch Notre Dame, of course, and then to watch Colts Falcons and Jonathan Taylor doing Jonathan Taylor things. That was quite the viewing. So today's pod, Eddie, I do want to look a little bit back on that Falcons game and just kind of go over a few items. We don't have to get into the full what I liked, what I didn't like. A little bit of the DeForest Buckner news is that item broke after our pod last week, and then a lot of Twitter questions, a lot of kind of big picture bye week stuff, what you would typically find there. So we'll do that.
Let's dive into that win for the Colts on the road in Berlin right before the bye week. Kevin, we've had some time, mainly you have had some time to kind of stew on it and kind of formulate your thoughts. So overall, what do you think of the Colts being able to, Jonathan Taylor to will them to victory, especially late in regulation, and a couple nice throws from Daniel Jones there in overtime as well, and Taylor able to finish off the Falcons?
Boy, what a Heisman moment, if you will. What an MVP moment from Taylor. And again, it's some combination of his patience, his ability to rev it up 0 to 60 so quickly in the open field. And you know what, Eddie, that the run itself there in regulation, I think kind of largely speaks for itself. But like his ability to make Billy Bowman miss in the backfield in overtime and then do it to Jesse Bates on the game winner. Like, I mean, how many times do you see running backs successfully do that, let alone at 200 and whatever he is, 20-some pounds? And I go back to that Denver play earlier this season, in the backfield. Looked like a tackle for loss. He rips it off down that right sideline for 60 or so. And think about all these plays he's had this season now. Obviously, the play in Berlin, the Denver run. I thought one of his best runs of the year was the A.D. Mitchell holding penalty against the Rams. I mean, that was an incredible run here. So, boy, is that bird poop on my hat? I don't know. I'm so nervous.
Let me see.
Just poop everywhere these days.
Let me see it.
Oh, I think it's toothpaste now that I think about it.
Are we sure that's toothpaste, Kevin?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I just tasted a minty flavor there.
Okay, I'm glad it was mint and not salty.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. You go there. Man, you got some issues here on this Thursday morning.
I do have issues.
That play from Taylor, it's just those plays I think in overtime, honestly, might even be just more individually impressive. It almost was like on the 80-yarder. Obviously, he revs it up, but there's a lot of give up there from the Atlanta Falcons on that play. But it was needed, and I always feel this way about these sorts of wins, Eddie. Like, you can look at them in two lights, and maybe some people look at the Indiana win over Penn State in a similar light. Like, do you look at it from a win's a win, championship resolve? Everyone has these games. Or is it, even in a win, you can't ignore the questions? Like Indiana was a big favorite over Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
In NFL terms, the Colts were a big favorite over the Atlanta Falcons. And, you literally had probably 3 plays where the game could have ended, like the 4th and 2, the missed field, if Badger misses that field. I thought one of the bigger Daniel Jones plays, and you obviously mentioned the 2 throws, was the scramble on 3rd and 21. I thought at 3rd and 21 time, my thought was you take 2 shots to Alec Pierce. Just period.
Yeah.
Like, when's the last time Pierce has been thrown an on-target deep ball and he hasn't come down with it?
That's true.
He comes down with all of them. And if he doesn't, he gets a flag.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing how great of a weapon he is. Now, again, the key is obviously on target there. That was certainly a big play early on. Warren, having the, I was curious if they would have called that a fumble on the field. Would they have overturned that to start the drive? But the 4th and 2, just a big play. And then obviously the little sail corner route, however you want to describe it there, in overtime was huge. So
that was a pretty throw too.
Yeah, that was one of the best throws we've seen. Those returns by Amir Abdullah were huge, and even Doolin there.
The second half special teams was much different.
Special teams are a roller coaster.
Yeah.
That was an absolute roller coaster. So, a couple other items defensively. I don't know if I thought for the most part the defense did a nice job, but then at the end of the day, it's like, well, you gave up the second most points the Falcons have scored all year. I mean, Atlanta's been bad offensively, man. They've been 10 or less in 4 of their 8 games heading into Sunday. Like, for that much star power, I thought you caused some Penix issues, but he also, I thought, just missed some wide open dudes.
Yep.
NFL open dudes as well. Gardner, I thought for the most part was pretty good considering all the expectations. Obviously, the 2-point conversion, is a play he'd like to have back if he said he slipped on that play.
I bet we'd like to have the Drake London touchdown back as well.
Yeah, the one with Jermaine Pratt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of it seemed like kind of the issues or the mix-ups with Gardner were mainly zone related.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of unsure.
Yeah, because Kurt Warner did a good job on the telecast highlighting. He goes, Sauce Gardner has, on the screen, the right side of the field. For him, it's the left side of the field. So, and he just got distracted by the eyes of Penix looking at Kyle Pitts. So he took Kyle Pitts and it left that back right zone wide open for Drake London. And the only person there to take him was Jermaine Pratt. So
and I think you saw, and we'll get into the DeForest Buckner situation here in just a second, but like the Cam Bynum play to me is a little Sauce Gardner presence. You're taking your deep field free safety and you're blitzing him off the edge. And again, I think there's some comfortability and trust, and that's pre Mooney Ward. I'm worried about Michael Badgley. I think I've been worried about it pretty much the whole time. When you miss another extra point, 2 extra points missed in 5 games. I had to go back to 2021, the last time the Colts missed 2 extra points. Matt Gay didn't miss a single one last year. He missed 1 in 23. 2022, the Colts didn't miss an extra point. So it's kind of crazy how rare it is. And I think I've told you this. I'll never forget watching Badgley's first practice out there, and it was a pretty nice day out there at 56th Street. And when he came up short on at least 1, if not 2 field goals at practice, I thought to myself, man, you don't see NFL kickers coming up short.
Especially at 53.
Right. And, think about the 4th and 2, Eddie.
Those are almost missed automatic now.
The 4th and 2 would have been a 58-yarder, I believe.
Are you talking about in the opening drive?
No, the 4th and 2 to Tyler Warren there.
Okay.
Late in regulation. That would have been a 58-yarder. I mean, how many NFL teams would have just attempted the field goal then?
That would have been a 45-yard on the first drive. When they turned it over on downs.
Yeah, which, again, I'm not, knowing Steichen, I'm not too shocked by that. But the final drive, instead of attempting the 44-yarder, it would have been 58 there. I mean, I don't know. Maybe 80% of NFL teams probably attempt the field goal then. You don't get a lot of them actually attempting the field goal or trying to go for it and get further yards. And a sneaky little play was Pittman right before the field goal. You got, 10 or 12 there right before the 44-yarder, and that was obviously a huge, huge play as well. So, those were, I think, in general, just kind of my thoughts on the game. I guess we got to talk a little Daniel Jones. Again, I thought the 3rd and 21 scramble was just huge. And I do think it's the most leg element game we've seen from Jones. And I do think that's an area that you can continue to tap into because you have to pick your poison with his offense. And, if you're going to bring some pressure and play man, Jones certainly has that ability to do that. I mean, it is kind of wild of how do you view Jones exiting the bye week?
Yep.
Is this regression to the mean? The whole baseball card analogy, Eddie. He really defied the back of his own baseball card through the first 8 games. Is that him? Is this the new Daniel Jones? And it was just a hiccup or two these last 2 weeks? Or is he getting back to the baseball card? Now, again, I do think, and I know I've joked about this, I've half joked, half serious, we're almost in the era of Chris Ballard where we go, pre-CB and ACB. The old pre-Chris Ballard and now the after Chris Ballard has decided to, do things differently and is operating. Is that there for Daniel Jones in a Shane Steichen offense? Is that there, for him in a Colts uniform, period there? So, I know I've said this before, but the whole Peyton Manning adage of, a huge part of being a quarterback is don't make a bad play worse. And right now, when the bad plays have shown up, he's starting to make them worse. Whether it's not finding the checkdowns, whether it's just holding on to the football, period. I thought the fumble on that third quarter screen that was egregious.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in field goal range there. So, he missed downs wide open late when they had to settle for a field goal. He looked like he was starting to scramble.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got sacked there. So,
just didn't have his eyes, in the right spot.
And again, I think it's a mix of things right now. It's, are some of the drops just too big? And I'm talking about his own footwork drops, 7-step drops. I go back to the interception in Pittsburgh. It's a first down shot to Pierce. Is that drop a little bit too greedy, knowing that TJ Watt's going to be one-on-one? Or is it hey, you got to know that Watt's one-on-one. Your eyes have got to get off Pierce a little bit earlier and get to Warren as the check down on that. It's kind of wild if you look at his turnover numbers, Eddie, because, you got fumble luck in that game again. I think you were +3 in the fumble luck against Falcons.
Yeah.
If you look at his sheer fumbles and interceptions, I want to say Tua is the only quarterback in the league that has more right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of wild to me. If you walked up to the random person right now, they'd say Daniel Jones is playing pretty good football.
Yeah.
And yet his interceptions and fumbles are the second most of anybody in the league.
Yeah.
Which is, again, it's crazy. Now, I think part of it is his other stuff has been so good that it's kind of overshadowed. And again, a lot of this is kind of a 2-week, bad 2 weeks, I guess is the simplest way to put it here. So, his own play, it's probably a good, healthy bye week for him of just maybe not as much as in his head, but, as much as bad as he had on Saturday or on Sunday, when you needed him, you didn't put a ton on his plate, but he delivered with the big scramble. I thought the ball placement on the 4th and 2 was pretty impressive as well. If that ball's placed anywhere else, I don't know if Warren catches it or necessarily gets the first down there. So, obviously, that'll be a big storyline is more of these environments and more of these defenses. Spagnuolo. I think Houston's front is really, really good. Seattle. Jacksonville at least has a couple names in their front. I know they aren't a great pressure team or a great sack team, but those are just some things to watch.
What do you think overall the run defense without DeForest Buckner to kind of bridge what we'll talk about after this? They allow, what was it, to Bijan and Algier, 140, I think, 141 between the two backs on 28 carries. So both those touchdowns going to Tyler Algier and had me frustrated as a Bijan Robinson fantasy football owner.
It is amazing. Watching that game, I didn't write off that game. I just kind of casually watched it and then went back and watched it for a second time. It did strike me. I'm like, man, I feel like Bijan does not get a lot of goal line carries. I'm like, well, if you had him on a fantasy football team, you would certainly.
5 yards a carry combined between the two backs.
Yeah, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. I think the D-tackle depth has improved, but still, the commitment. I guess we should transition into Buckner here, Eddie. I was talking to a defensive coach the Colts were playing a few weeks back, and I was like, hey, AJ, what are your thoughts on the Colts? And basically just summarized it, said simply 99 makes it all work.
Yep.
And it's simple statement, but it's, I think, quite the amount of accurate praise for what DeForest Buckner does. And you wouldn't call the pass rush a strength by any means. Let's call it a weakness. He is your engine that keeps the pass rush a notch above being on fumes, in my opinion. Because command so many double teams that without him now, where do those doubles go?
Yeah.
Do they exist? Do you feel a little bit more cognizant about, hey, we don't need to necessarily have a center and a guard there. So now Zaire Franklin, granted, didn't work on Sunday, but the Zaire Franklin blitzing up the middle, maybe it's not as dynamic necessarily as it was on that play there. So, he's always been high on the most indispensable list. I went back and watched the Pittsburgh game. He goes in the blue tent, Eddie, late in the first half. He was in there for a few plays. He definitely was in some serious pain on the sideline. But then he came back in, finished the first half, and I think played about a normal amount of snaps in the second half.
I was like, oh, no, not Grover.
Yeah. I don't know if I said to you when he went in there with a concussion. I think I said to you on Wednesday's pod, like, with Buckner and injuries, we often chalk it up with, like, oh, it's Buckner, he's fine.
Yeah.
But if there are injuries that worry me, when I see neck and I see bicep, I'm always like, I feel like it never, or like pec.
Yeah.
I feel like you never just have a pec injury for a week.
Mm-mm.
No, you tear the thing.
Yeah.
Or like Achilles.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some of these injuries when I see it, like 300-pound dudes with a neck injury. That really worries me.
And like Buckner, what was that, 2 years ago when he was playing through the elbow?
Yeah. Tommy John is what he would have needed there for that. So I know, Steichen is obviously, hell, you could call it lying, you could call it gamesmanship, pick whatever you want. Clearly, he likes to be very coy with the injuries that don't occur during games, so he doesn't have to address them necessarily. So I think that played into it. So, yeah, it's going to be at least
right there?
4 games. Yeah, sorry, I got a little choked up there. It's going to be at least 4 games, and, I think it definitely could be longer than that. So, obviously, that'll be a huge storyline. Curious, too, like, how much do they know the severity of the Buckner injury before the Gardner trade? How much, if any, did that play into it? But, Adetomiwa Adebawore has really stepped up. Neville Gallimore, I think, earlier in the season had a few more moments, but, particularly on the rundowns, as you mentioned, you're going to, I think, miss him. And then, obviously, it's just unique to have a defensive tackle that can play on pass downs as much as he can and really command double teams. Chris Jones is obviously one of them you're going to see a week from Sunday here. And, it seems like the Colts have had a lot of interior offensive line opposing injuries this season. Atlanta was one of those teams, and you'd love to have Buckner kind of feasting upon that. So, when you get into playoff football and you get in these one-possession games, Eddie, Buckner making one third down play can be the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think it's a very notable loss for however long it is.
I thought JT Tuimoloau had a solid game against Atlanta, too. I felt like I noticed him a little bit getting towards Michael
I thought
Penix.
He had a few more. Yeah. I think that's worth pointing out there. But again, you look at your D-line production in that game, too. You just want more. You want more from that whole group. If you look at the line of scrimmage sort of production, it typically is other guys making those sorts of plays. So, obviously, that continues to be a question that I have.
Oh, I can't believe we failed to mention this either, Kevin, before we get to Twitter questions. Shout out to Zaire Franklin. We were talking about him a couple of weeks ago, I think, on the pod, and, wondering if, if there was like a decline there or if it was the system or whatever. 10 tackles, a sack, 2 TFLs, and of course, he had a couple of big plays there in overtime for the Colts.
Yeah, those are huge plays in overtime. Yeah, I thought it was kind of a very soft penalty on Mekhi Blackman there. And I thought to myself, oh boy, is this going to start something? Because, Penix led a pretty seamless drive there to end regulation to tie the game up there. Do you think Atlanta should have taken the timeout, by the way? Or should they have rushed Badgley out there?
I am in the camp of taking the timeout because then it gives you a chance on the other side. If he misses that kick, you've got some time left to maybe get, a chunk play down the field to set yourself up, for a field goal potentially.
Yeah, I think I largely
I guess they wouldn't have needed the field goal, right?
Yeah, no, it would have been a tie game. Yeah, field goal would have been for the win.
My mom, it's like 4 days ago, and the Pacers gave up 152 points the other night, so my mind is all over the place. I forgot when exactly that happened in the game.
Yeah, so it's like 20-some seconds, 25 seconds when Raheem Morris takes his time out. I can kind of hear both sides of it. Raheem Morris has been asked about that afterwards by the Atlanta media. Badgley having missed a couple kicks already, could that have played into it? So it's just kind of the interesting debate you get into those end-of-game situations. I thought the clock management by both teams were a little odd there in the first half. So
yeah, Atlanta not calling the timeout when they should have. Yeah. At the end of the first half, I was like, what in the world?
I thought both sides had some issues there. So, unless you got anything else, let's hop into, I think, a good amount of Twitter questions.
Oh, yeah, we've got a ton of them. We will start with Connor. Connor was wondering, Kevin, what Carly Ursay-Gordon's interactions are like with the media, as she seems like someone naturally suited, given she seems like true fan and has a lot of exposure to the game. However, I've only seen very reserved and rarely exposed to the media. What kind of relationship does she have with the media, and do you see that relationship changing in the future? Highly recommend, by the way, reading Stephen Holder's piece on Carly Ursay-Gordon on ESPN.com as well.
Yeah, that was well done. And I think Joel, if I can mention Joel Erickson as well, he's had some features on all three of the daughters for the Star. I thought those are well done as well. The little, I don't want to act like I know Carly super, super well, but, my interactions over the years with her, I've always thought very curious, smart, I would say curious / inquisitive. I think, just kind of a sponge, which, I think when you get to people with the last name she has, or people in positions in authority, I think it's really important to have those sorts of qualities, particularly when, yes, she was born in the business, but the daily grind of running an NFL team is a lot different. And I think you've got to be someone that, is willing to wear a lot of hats of just opening your ears. And I think she clearly is a fan of doing that. Maybe a little bit more reserved, certainly, than her father, but I also think there's a little bit of fire in there that maybe she won't give off necessarily as outwardly as her dad will, but that it's in there. As far as media is concerned, we've talked to her once in a group setting, and that was, right after her dad's passing there. So nothing at training camp like her dad typically would do. We'll see what the offseason looks like. For the most part, an owner primarily speaks then. I thought Ballard might have talked after the Gardner trade. I thought, the Jets GM talked. I was kind of hoping he would, but he did not there. So, that's a little bit of Carly background, if you will.
Of course, there was the video circulating of her buying around for everybody.
I saw that.
Yeah.
In Berlin. Very smartly done there.
Yeah.
By the way, that atmosphere seemed great.
Yeah.
On TV and everything. I think I've told you, Eddie, I'm a fan of the international games. I know a lot of people aren't, and I get the Colts had to give up a home game, but I like the thought of you give up one home game every 4 years. You play an international game every other year, and you give up a home game once every 4.
Yeah.
And you rotate it around. So I think that would give, 8 international games at the various sites. And I know we've got, in my interaction, just with international fans, and again, this comes from my experience at Wembley now 9 years ago. I think it's such a cool atmosphere, and it's fun occasionally. I'm not saying you do it weekly or twice a month to go over there and experience that. I think it's cool for your fan base, and the international market is real, and they're passionate, and they want to learn more, and the game is starting to become a little bit more global. It's nothing like the NBA, of course, but I'm totally good with it. And I thought it brought some life, frankly, to an NFL season. That, not at times, but, occasionally you can get a tad redundant. I really enjoyed it.
While we're talking about Carly, there's not another question about this. Did you see the Albert Breer post-trade deadline story that he did? And it talked about the Colts and the trade.
Yeah, a little bit of that. Yeah.
And the quote that he got was from Carly Ursay-Gordon was like, are you going to Band-Aid it or fix it forever or whatever?
Yeah, she asked Chris Ballard that question.
Do you think that's her giving her like, hey, let's do this and stop being, the old curmudgeony guy that you have been with valuing your picks or whatever, and go out and get a guy that's proven who can actually help us win right now?
Yeah, it's a great question because it was presented just as a question in the piece. I didn't think it was inferred by Carly necessarily to say, stop Band-Aiding it. It kind of reminded me a little bit of and we saw a video of this with the Colts doing that with the next pick series, when Jim Irsay spoke up in the Zoom during the 2020 draft of saying, haven't you guys talked about Jonathan Taylor a lot? Don't you really like him? And, Ballard kind of confirming that and being like, well, if you really like him, then go up and get him. Yeah. And they, and that trade was nothing like the Sauce Gardner trade. That was just a day 3 pick to move up a few spots to get Taylor. So, again, this is my opinion. My opinion is, it's a huge part of Carly Ursay's job to ask questions, just to get the gears grinding a little bit, to think about that stuff. So, in a way, you can look at corner And yes, are they trying to Band-Aid it right now with Xavier Howard or maybe
Mekhi Blackman?
Mekhi Blackman, thank you.
Or Asante Taylor, the guy from New Orleans.
Yeah, Asante Taylor.
Whatever.
Like a little bit of that. But like they also gave Travaris Ward the most money they've given anybody.
Yeah.
And they drafted Justin Wally in round 3. So I don't, like, to me at corner, Ballard has attempted a good amount. Maybe the big free agent signing is the one he hasn't done until this one. Now, again, Xavier Rhodes and Stephon Gilmore were more of the short term here. But, yeah, I guess I didn't read it, Eddie, as like she was saying, hey, it's time to Band-Aid it. But I think she might have thought to herself, you know what? This is a premium position. It's a position that we haven't had a lot of drafting success on. If this opportunity does present itself and it doesn't grow on trees, maybe this is the time to try and put more of a serious bandage on it and not just whatever on a bullet wound there. So, I thought it was an interesting little tidbit that Albert shared.
A position group that's kind of declined the last couple of weeks, along with Daniel Jones, has been the offensive line. And Jay would like to know, what do you think has been going on with the O-line the past 2 weeks? Have teams just figured something out? Are they wore out? Injuries? Just a big difference from almost no sacks to 13 in the last 2 games.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say a little bit of the edge pressure, I think, has mainly gotten to the Colts more so than interior stuff, which is not maybe what you'd expect given how the personnel is. It continues to be a group that's incredibly healthy. Again, 9 of 10 weeks this season, you've had the same starting O-line, and it's not like these guys have been on the injury report any. Like Braden Smith's missed an occasional Wednesday, but that's really it. I do think you've played a little bit of better fronts. I know the Atlanta guys are less heralded, but they spent a lot of draft capital into Jalen Walker, into James Pierce, and obviously the Pittsburgh guys, still have some names. Granted, I'm watching Sunday Night Football thinking, man, the Pittsburgh dudes, could have wrecked those Chargers tackles a little bit more than they wrecked the old Colts high-paid guys there. So, and I'll go back to what I said about Daniel Jones earlier in the offenses, or the defenses, I should say, you're about to play. You're about to face some pretty good fronts, and fronts that are going to be pretty exotic as well. So, that to me, I think is just different. And, again, with the Daniel Jones element to this, one of the biggest Jones outliers through the first 8 games was what he was doing against pressure. Like, that was the bugaboo in New York. Yeah. When pressure gets to him, he wilts. And again, you can say that about a lot of quarterbacks, but his was very noticeable. Through the first 8 games, Eddie, when pressure got to him, he didn't wilt. He would feast, frankly, quite often. Was that the outlier? I think that's probably the biggest question moving forward. It's like, there's a little bit of a level of, yes, the O-line has had some really sound games, but when you're facing playoff caliber teams, there probably is going to be some sort of whatever. Sacks, pressures, blitzing, however you want to label it. What does Jones look like? Can he do a better job of surviving to the next play, making drives, end and kicks, finding checkdowns, those sorts of things, scrambling when those opportunities do present itself? I think that's going to be really critical for him exiting the bye week.
Yeah, we've got some other questions about Daniel Jones and his pocket awareness / presence, so I'll hold off on asking any more on that. Colton and AJ, this is in regards to Alec Pierce, because yesterday, I know some of these questions were coming in before ESPN released this, but Matt Bowen, no relation to Kevin Bowen.
None.
And Jeremy Fowler, 2 senior reporters with ESPN, they came out with their top 25 for the 2026 NFL free agency class. And 3 of the top 7 were Colts players: Daniel Jones, Braden Smith, and Alec Pierce. And in that order, were on that list. And would you re-sign Alec Pierce this offseason? If so, what is the max you'd give him? That's the question from Colton and AJ. He's going to demand a lot of money, and I don't know if the Colts have that money, but he's looking to be a favorite for Daniel Jones. And I connect the two with this because Jeremy Fowler wrote in the piece that don't be surprised if Alec Pierce gets $20 million a year. And I just feel like Pierce has played his way into more than $20 million a year based off the fact that they're not just using him down the field anymore as this speed demon guy to get beyond the corner, past the safeties to stretch the field and chuck it down there, draw PIs or whatever, get a 30-yard completion. We're seeing him a lot more over the middle on drag routes. We're seeing him a lot more on these outside breaking routes toward the sideline. And not to mention, you saw it in the 83-yard touchdown play. His blocking in the run game is an underrated part of his game that does not get talked about enough.
Yeah, that is well said. It's funny, we were chatting with Reggie Wayne last week about a variety of things, and we talked about Pierce. Someone mentioned kind of the arrow going up on him, and Reggie, in the typical Reggie way, is like, that's not the only thing going up. So is his price tag. Reggie gets it, and specifically, I think he talks about that route tree. And Eddie, remember at the start of the season, we got into a little bit of this debate. I think it was right around the Terry McLaurin news, because Terry McLaurin and Michael Pittman Jr. are following very similar contract situations. They opted for the shorter second deal to hit free agency earlier in the third contract. And I said to you, I go, what would you rather do? Give Michael Pittman Jr. a third contract or give Alec Pierce a second contract? And I said Pierce for the second contract.
I remember in training camp, we were talking about which receiver strikes more defense,
right.
Fear into a defense.
Exactly. Who's easier to replace?
Yeah.
And to me, and again, this comes from a Pittman guy. Like I've long appreciated Pittman for what he brings, but the easier to replace is him, not Pierce. Now, by all accounts, both dudes love Indy, and Pittman has made his home here, literally from a farm standpoint. And I do think Sauce Gardner and Alec Pierce are very, very close. But yeah, it's just like this is probably a bad analogy, and I shouldn't say it as a father of two daughters, but like Alec Pierce is like he's the smart girl that's now gotten hot too, or he's the hot girl that's now smart.
Probably the other way around, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because the straight was, he was always hot because he could always go deep, but now he's rounded out a little bit more. So again, what do you do? Do you tag Pierce? You and I were discussing this before the show, Eddie. The old $20 million tag. Frankly, I think it was $20 million before this year. I think I said to you, the Colts turned down a team offering a second round pick for him. Can you imagine? And that was pre-start of the season. So. And then, if Jonathan Taylor keeps this up, Malky Kawa ain't going to be quiet this offseason.
Nope.
That Taylor's agent's going to be chiming in here as well. So, man, I just go back to something about Pierce. Like, when you watch the TV copy of games and you see Daniel Jones on Cork One,
mm-hmm.
I just think to myself, if that announcer says, and he's got Pierce deep, it's like watching Halliburton shoot a game winner in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's like, it's going in.
Yeah.
Pierce is catching it.
Uh-huh. Or the penalty. One of the two, yeah.
There's just like no doubting that. And honestly, more of the question is Jones getting it on target, frankly, on that. So, I don't know, Eddie. I would probably rank it like this. Jones and Pierce, 1-1A. And then I think it's a big drop to Braden Smith and Nick Cross.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very difficult to pay a second safety the amount of money you would have to pay Nick Cross.
Yep.
I get there's really nobody behind him, whereas Jalen Travis is still, I think it's Jalen Travis more than Gonzalez. I think Gonzalez is guard moving forward here. So that's how I would view it. Now, again, financially, you probably could squeeze Braden and or Nick Cross in if you would like to. And, who knows where Braden's at from a family standpoint, third contract, all that. But yeah, that's how I probably view this offseason.
Just kind of looking at, average, contracts for receivers. Two that stuck out to me when I was looking at this, Jameson Williams for Detroit, $26.666 million a year. Cortland Sutton, $23 a year. Calvin Ridley, $23 a year. Michael Pittman Jr., $23.333 repeating. And Nico Collins for Houston, $24.25.
Yeah, I mean, those are some impressive names that you just laid out there north of 20, but obviously the cap continues to go up.
The Jameson Williams one is the one that I would probably look at the most.
And I just keep on going back to this, Eddie. He has the specialist trait.
Yeah.
And I say that for a reason there. Like, he's got the unique element. I don't know what I could compare it to in a different sport. I don't, like, whatever. The rare pitcher out of the bullpen that has just a special pitch that you think is
Mariano Rivera's cutter.
Super effective, sure. it's just that element to him of it's hard to create a lot of deep chunk plays in the NFL.
Yeah.
That's just how defenses are largely playing it. And when you have a guy with whatever, the volleyball background that he has and his ability to high point it and come down with it. I mean, he didn't. I'll never forget him playing Notre Dame and IU in that final season in Cincinnati. And, he mossed some dudes in those games. So, boy, this is going to be quite the payday for him. And we'll see. Again, is Pittman going to be a casualty?
Yeah, that is a fascinating one to monitor this offseason. Pittman obviously would have to be a casualty, in my opinion, just for, if you wanted to bring back Nick Cross. But that's just how I feel about it.
Yeah, and you might have to do some of that juggling. And then, again, where does Lou Anarumo come into play with all this? Is there more defensive personnel that he feels like needs to be tweaked or changed? What's the future at linebacker?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one that, again, doesn't seem like it's a huge priority, but still, you can't totally ignore it.
Still 5 Twitter questions left. Walter, looking at the last 2 games with Daniel Jones is looking more affordable. What the Colts can't do is what the Giants did and overpay him then hurt their chances to sign other key players. Ball security is a big question with him, and he is showing more of the Giants' traits that got him released. JT definitely should be the MVP, and the success Daniel Jones has had is due to Jonathan Taylor running through the league.
Boy, I had to laugh when you said the word affordable. Affordable and quarterback in the same sentence makes me laugh.
I know.
I don't think that's a word I would ever use. I understand where Walter's coming from. Eddie, this is a slippery slope. Who are you paying for? Are you paying for Tannehill? Are you paying for Daniel Jones Giants? Or are you paying for Baker? Seattle is a fascinating example of it this past offseason. Letting Geno walk for Darnold. And by all accounts right now, it looks like a definite upgrade. Like, to me, I don't think the Minnesota, people keep on bringing up Minnesota. If I'm not mistaken, I think Minnesota might have offered Daniel Jones more than Indy. I'm pretty sure that is true. But, I understand where Minnesota was. You drafted J.J. McCarthy. They traded up, did they not, for J.J. McCarthy? They drafted him, 11 overall, 12 overall?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
And, he wasn't some project. You don't draft him and not give him the keys at some point here. Could they have waited, I guess, another year? Maybe they could have. But, again, Darnold probably wanted multiple years at that point. So, this is going to be really, really interesting. And, if this level of, let's say Jones, if the first 8 games, Eddie, and the last 2 games, let's say if those 2 had a baby, and that's the Daniel Jones we see the rest of the season.
Now, we learned from Max Bowen that the baby goes in the belly, right?
Well, that, and if you're in the car with kids, maybe you want to turn it down, but I do have to share this from Max Bowen here from a couple days back. I said to Max, hey, you want to change Nelly? And, he's intrigued. Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, Max has been super sweet, and then he gets a dinosaur in his hand, and he gets close to Nelly, and he turns into Vontaze Burfict on the third down. He's just headhunting. And I'm like, Max, we can't have that. So, anyways, he comes and helps me change her, and, I take off her diaper and get ready to, put a new diaper. And certainly she has gone number 2 here in this diaper. And all of a sudden, Max Bowen just yells out, Daddy, what is that? Look at her penis. And I'm like, oh, jeez. And so, anatomy for a 3-year-old, probably not necessarily the most up to date, but he was.
So how was the birds and the bees convo?
He was confusing her umbilical cord, which is still there. It was there until she had a blowout last night, and then it finally came off. The umbilical cord kind of hangs in there for a few days post delivery, and he was very confused about that element to her there. So, yeah, I have no idea where I was going with that, Max Bowen. Why did you bring him up?
Oh, because remember he filled in for me that one pod, and he mentioned, he goes, I was in mommy's belly, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, he's explained a lot. He said Falcons on the pod, but he went with Colts on the helmet pick, so he got back to his winning ways.
Oh, that's great. Let's get back into the Twitter questions. Hank, Daniel Jones definitely holds on to the football way too long, especially when defenses send pressure. I feel like that's part of the reason why he keeps getting strip sacked. Are there counter blitzes that Steichen can install into our game plan to prevent these disaster plays. I feel like read option plays could be one way to counter the blitz. Another thing that I would say is just the fact that he's just standing in the pocket too long. He doesn't really, I understand he's trying to get away from the narrative of him being a running quarterback first, but step up in the pocket or trying to extend the play a little bit.
Yeah, it goes back to what I was saying about that Pittsburgh play on the shot to Pierce that he wanted on the first down. Is there an element, and again, this is, I think, Steichen and Jones both collaborating here. Is there an element of when you draw this play up on a Tuesday, you're saying to him, hey, on this play, we're leaving Braden Smith one-on-one with TJ Watt. You either have to anticipate that deep ball to Pierce at 2.1 in your head, and if you get to 2.5, that ball's got to be to number 84 in the check down. That, I think, I'm fine with drawing up some concerted 7-step drops. I feel that way about Notre Dame football right now. CJ Carr is such a great deep ball thrower. You have got to have him dialing, I would say, 1 to 2 deep balls every quarter. But when you do that, make sure that your tackles, either he knows they're on an island or they're not on an island. And, you obviously want to deploy X amount of people out on a route tree to, help out from a check down standpoint. And so I think that is part of it. I don't think maybe he's found as many check downs. It seems like the Jonathan Taylor little dumps haven't been maybe as abundant, or in general, where are those hot? And it's hard to, when you're taking a 7-step drop, the old hot read is probably going to be a little different. So again, can you find some of those hots a little bit more?
The Taylor check down aspect could have been just because they're asking him to chip more and be in more pass protection.
Yeah, that could be part of it as well. But those legs have been a weapon. And again, it's not legs from a read option standpoint; it's legs from a scramble standpoint. So that has been very good of him.
How many times have you said those legs have been a weapon?
Probably a lot. But that was, without him, they don't win. That 3rd and 21. Even if he only gets 10 there.
How many different things can you apply that to? Those legs have been a weapon.
Oh, yeah, I don't, again.
This certainly has not been a PG pod today.
Well, this is one of my half-ass brain podcasts of all time here, so I'm just trying to fight through it and get back home.
Brett would like to know, has the fan base realized that we're on a collision course for another Colts-Patriots AFC championship? Not going to count chickens before they hatch, but I'd much prefer playing the Chiefs and the Patriots in playoff football. How about this? Haven't they played each of the last 4 years, and this is the 1 year that they haven't played each other and they're both good again?
Colts, Patriots?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. And now we're getting into the old Chiefs stat of Patrick Mahomes has never beat the Colts. With 0-2 in the regular season, right? I did beat them in the playoffs there. I do think Drake May is good. I don't think the Chiefs, I don't think the Patriots are 8-2 good, but I do think Drake May is good. I would rather play the Patriots than the Chiefs, though.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in playoff stepping stones.
Yeah.
And playoff experience matters.
Mm-hmm.
Took Peyton Manning 6 years to win a game in the playoffs. Took him 9 years to win a Super Bowl. Andrew Luck had the progression of 3 years, appearance, win, road win. It is pretty wild when you look at the standings, Eddie. Jacksonville to me is on life support. I just don't see them hanging in there. Maybe their schedule will help them out, but I think that collapse on Sunday was Travis Hunter out for the year. To me, I don't think Jacksonville will be there.
But inversely, Houston seems to be ascending.
Yeah, but they got a long way to go.
I understand.
They got a small margin for error, and it could be another week of Davis Mills. So, and I know they got Tennessee, but still. You very well, which would be wild. We could get to January and the 3 road wild card quarterbacks, Mahomes, Allen, and Herbert.
Wild.
You imagine what the Vegas lines would look like with those 3 on the road?
Yeah.
And that's why it's so critical to get the 1 seed. To be the Colts and not be the Patriots. Or tonight, if you're listening to this, we're recording late Thursday morning, JETS it up. You want the Jets to beat the Patriots. And we got a little bit of this debate on our morning show.
Just don't drop the ball.
Yeah. A.D. Mitchell plus 1,000, did I see, to score a touchdown?
I believe so.
In this game. We got a little bit of debate of Denver, Kansas City is Sunday. Who would you rather have win? And I am of the thinking of you want the 1 seed. So you want Kansas City to beat Denver. But then there's a little bit of thinking of, do you just want to try and bury Kansas City?
Yeah.
Which It's a good counter thought. I don't think I'm there, but I can kind of hear people out on that.
Yeah, because right now, Kansas City 5-4.
Because they're technically the 8, right? They're outside of Jacksonville.
Yeah, and you would have to assume one of Cincinnati or Baltimore is going to ascend into that conversation as well.
Boy, I'll go back, Eddie, to a conversation we had Wednesday before the Falcons game. Like, to me, I think I called it like a heightened urgency. It's one of these games that I think, it's an NFC game in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
On paper, it doesn't feel like it's a big game. To me, that was such a crucial win.
Oh, yeah.
Because, and just look at the sequence of those two games in the AFC South.
Yeah.
If Atlanta bats down 4th and 2 and Davis Mills doesn't scramble for his life, now all of a sudden you're looking at what? 3-loss Indy and 3-loss Jacksonville going into the bye. And you still face Jacksonville twice. Like, the AFC South, by record, the Colts have a very nice lead.
Yeah.
But the fact that they haven't played Jacksonville or Houston leaves the door open. Now, again, I expect Indy to close it, but mathematically, if Jacksonville were to sweep you, now all of a sudden the division turns into probably a little bit of favorite to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Just mathematically, head-to-head tiebreaker, all that.
Ben would like to know if the Colts can put Ashton Dulin back there to return punts. Josh Downs is talented and has game-breaking ability, but he has a turnover waiting to happen. We saw it 2 weeks ago, and it almost happened again against the Falcons. He didn't track the ball well in the air.
Yeah, he does have a little bit of that to him. Now, isn't it always funny how the most dynamic punt returners have a little bit of that to them almost? The ball, and I'm thinking of Josh Cribbs fumbling on the AFC title game after the Colts got an early stop against New England, and Deflategate took on a whole different meaning from there. So, I hear you out on it. Dulin, I can't even recall Dulin fielding too many punts even during training camp. It always seems like it's just a small wideout that's back there doing it. So, I don't know. Gould seems to be fine. You would think Downs would be just so secure based off how he is as a wideout there, but he definitely has towed the line. But then when he gets his hands on it, huge place. And again, I'll go back to what I said earlier, man. Abdullah on those returns. I mean, I assume the Colts would have gotten into Badgley field goal range again. But, Eddie, by Abdullah getting that return like he did, you probably removed yourself from another 2 to 3 pass rush situations.
Yeah.
And given how your line and Daniel Jones were holding up, that might have been the difference in the game.
Yeah. Final Twitter question is from Joel. Now that Sauce Gardner trade has happened, it seems apparent that Daniel Jones is going to be the guy moving forward. Joel's question is, did the Colts show their hand by not extending Jones before the trade deadline? Put another way, will Jones come at a higher price now that his agent knows the Colts now lack the resources to draft the top-tier quarterback for the next 2 years at least? Or was it too soon to get a deal done with Jones? Not criticizing the trade, I am a fan of it.
Yeah, Joel, that's probably one way to look at it. I think that's a good point. Now, we should mention you do have the franchise tag. Eddie, I'd like to think this. An agent is an agent. They're going to try and get the most money. I understand how that works, and that's their job. I also would like to think in a quiet moment between agent and Daniel Jones where they're not speaking to the Colts and the Colts aren't listening, they would like to say, Daniel Jones, would like to say, you know what? This Indy situation has worked out great.
Yep.
I love Shane Steichen.
I love the tin roof.
Jonathan Taylor. I love the tin roof. I love going to the Indy 500 and having a drink or two. I enjoy my life here. And I enjoy playing football here. And that, to me, easy for me to say, is worth a couple million less than going to play in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Or wherever. So, again, I know that sounds merry, and it's easy for me to, as someone that has never seen commas like Daniel Jones and will never sniff commas like Daniel Jones in his life, to sit here and say, but I'd like to think that's in the Colts' corner. Now, again, it's a dangerous game to play.
Are you talking about the podcast?
Oh, very good. Gosh, my brain is so fried today. Like that didn't even register to me.
Nice job.
So yeah, I guess the Colts showed their hand a little bit, but you can only acquire quarterbacks in so many ways. Yeah. Well, how Jones plays the rest of the year, Eddie, really interesting.
It'll be really interesting to see how the Anthony Richardson play out and downfall of this too. Because obviously you've committed to Jones with the 2 trades.
Yeah, I just assume you trade him in the year. I mean, does Richardson put on a Colts uniform the rest of the year? I guess he's eligible to come off IR, right? Isn't he, after the bye?
Yeah.
Someone was telling me that eye was like very close to being potentially gone.
What?
It was like that close.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, I hope I can't. And again, we're only out there for the first 20 minutes. I don't know if I've seen him at a Colts practice yet. Have you seen him on the sidelines?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't.
But then again, I'm not actively looking.
Right, but you would think the camera would show him.
Yeah.
If he is there. So hopefully everything's good on that end. All right, Eddie, you got anything else, man?
Do you have anything more? Do we have any other inappropriate stuff to talk about?
Yeah, do you have to put the E on this podcast? Capital E.
The explicit.
He is Eddie Garrison. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody have a great, great weekend. And we'll be back next Wednesday. Colts Corner, Kevin Bowen, Colts and Chiefs in Week 12.